Welcome everyone. I'm so glad you're taking the time to watch this video. There will be a number of moments in which I'll encourage you to pause the video and participate in an activity. You'll be able to share your thoughts below. I hope that this generates a bit of conversation, but on the other hand, if you prefer to just listen, that's fine too. The pauses will be short. In this video, I'm going to take my part in the favorite pastime of rhetoricians like myself, defining rhetoric. Many others have defined rhetoric, and instead of spending a bunch of time walking through these definitions, I'll point you to a few podcasts and articles linked in the description. So instead of going through this history, I want to set off from the common definition of rhetoric, which follows: rhetoric is concerned with the way that we use language and other communication systems to persuade people. Maybe take a moment and pause the video and think about some time when you were either persuaded by or persuaded someone with language. Who were they? What did they persuade you to do? Why were they successful if they were successful? Why did they fail if they failed? Understanding rhetoric as persuasion or argumentation is useful, and I'm extending the definition here only because I'm interested in tracing things. To that end, I suggest that we see rhetoric not only as how we persuade people, but how we're able to exert force on people through our communication. A quick example of this: I'm a teacher, and as such, I ask my students to do assignments. My request comes in the form of an assignment prompt, which gives them specifications on how to comply. Often, I'll also say something in class or post an announcement to my learning management system. Many students perhaps would rather not be doing the homework, but they do so anyway because I insist that they do it. My authority as a teacher, along with the institutional weight of grades, compels them to do the work. Perhaps also they want to do the assignment because they know it will improve their writing. So there's a number of forces at play here. We could say I persuade them to do their assignments, but I think it is useful to think of this rhetorical action as a force. The force stems from my own authority as a teacher, plus the added force of the grades, plus any force they feel to improve their writing. That force is directed through the assignment prompt, which gives it a specific shape and specific guidelines on how the students can respond. Understanding how this force is exerted and focused is useful in understanding what causes the students to do the work. So take a moment now and think about the times you've been persuaded or persuaded people of things, and think about how the force worked. How was the force exerted? Who felt it? Why did they feel it? Were they compelled to act or not? This ability to exert force through communication can be reasonable, like me asking students to do assignments, or it can be highly problematic. For both reasons, I think it's worth thinking about. So if you want to, feel free to comment below and take just a moment to do that. Any communicative action will exert force in some ways. You might say, well, what about informational packets or history books or other unbiased texts, things that just share the history of the world or the nature of the world? Well, I'd say that they're the ones to watch out for the most because informational rhetoric exerts a force that defines the world. Now, the fact that they're rhetorical and exert force doesn't necessarily mean we should be worried. Not all persuasion is coercion or based on falsehoods. The point is that whenever we are communicating some meaning, we are persuading people, or exerting force on people, and we're at least pushing our audience to believe us, and that itself is a force. Now, I'm not going to take a lot of time discussing all of the different ways forces generate in rhetoric. Instead, I want to turn to one particular way, and that is related to what Kenneth Burke calls identification. This is a This is based on the notion that humans are social animals, and we don't do particularly well when we're outcast from society. The pull that we feel to be part of the society, and the push that we feel to avoid being ostracized is quite strong. Identification works in two ways. So in the first way, it encourages the audience to identify with the rhetor, or the person talking. If that person seems like a reasonable or cool person, we're inclined to agree with them. Um, in the 2000 presidential election, George W. Bush had this going for him. He seemed, and I quote, like someone people would like to go have a beer with, whereas Al Gore, while the better candidate, was wooden and fairly elitist, not someone people really wanted to identify with. This part of identification is at work when we write resumes. Also, the company is looking for a particular type of person for the role, and your resume identifies you or gives you an appearance of hopefully filling that role. On the other side, rhetoric invites the audience to identify themselves with a particular group. For instance, when a car commercial shows a young, happy family, the audience is encouraged to want to be part of that society or that group, and to do so, they're supposed to buy the car. Likewise, peer pressure that encourages people to do stuff because everybody is doing it is another good example. We are pushed to be part of the group. Group identification can also work in the negative. In these cases, the audience is encouraged to disidentify from a particular group. For instance, the exclamation that some anti Trump folks say, "You're racist if you vote for Donald Trump," offers you two choices. One, agree with the people who are saying this and vote for the other candidate, or be identified as a racist and vote for Trump. Of course, voting for Trump is at least tacitly supporting racist policies, but that's not the point I'm trying to make here. The important point here is the disidentification. The audience is offered a group to disidentify from and an action to allow them to accomplish that. Identification is a crucial element of how rhetoric exerts force. Humans are, for the most part, social creatures, and we frequently do not do particularly well in isolation. We have fairly strong ingrained desires to be part of a group. Now, while I couldn't claim that absolutely everybody feels it, the pull to be connected with other people is stronger in many cases than our reason, and abandonment, exile, ostracization can be as painful as physical violence. Rhetoric that uses identification is deploying exactly this social force. This is both useful for us as rhetors and dangerous for us as audience. Mob mentality is based on identification. We go along with this group even if the group is bad or is doing bad things because the force causing us to avoid feeling exiled is stronger perhaps than our morals in some cases. Likewise, any case where propaganda scapegoats a group of people as outsiders is using disidentification to encourage its audience to other or allow harm to come to the scapegoated group. So, what are our takeaways? First, rhetoric is persuasion in communication. It is the way that communicative action exerts force on its audience. Second, that force stems from many sources and can be traced through bodies and texts as it is exerted. I personally am quite interested in this tracing project. Third, one of the most important and frightening ways that rhetoric exerts force is through identification. I'd be really interested to hear what you think, so please feel free to comment below. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Have a great day.